welcome to the Moonshots podcast. It is a very special episode 100. And as always, I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and the man who's rather special himself is with me again, Mr. Mark Pearson Freeland. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. What a centenary show we have ahead for our listeners. Can you believe it? It's sunny outside. It feels like a pretty good day.
It feels like an interesting moment to challenge ourselves to encapsulate all of the 99 shows into one, all of that moonshot wisdom, all of those ideas into one show. I mean, if you could only listen to one moonshot show, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try and make that and create that with you today.
And talking about one, there is one other individual Mike that we've got to bring in to our show today. It would only feel fitting, as we're talking about moonshots thinkers, to bring in one of our moonshot thinkers themselves. We are pleased and celebrating all around by returning co-host, Mr. Chad Owen. Good morning, Chad.
Hello there. It is an honor and a privilege to be back here on the Moonshots podcast. I must say, this is a warm and cozy place for me. So I'm really excited for today's show.
It is so good to have you back, Chad. And listen, we really have to shout out your recent adventure. I mean, you have traveled far and wide across America. I mean, please update us on your travels.
Like most people across the globe, I was feeling a bit trapped inside of my small New York apartment with a wife and dog. So we decided to take a 3-month road trip where we're camping in state and national parks and see as much of North America as we could. Unfortunately, the Canadian border was closed to us Americans because we couldn't get things under control. But we managed to see 50 national parks, 25 states, and working from the road was an amazing experience. And we feel very fortunate to have been able to do so. And now we're hunkering back down here in New York, preparing for winter.
And what advice would you have for anyone who hears what you have just done? What would be your advice to all our listeners if they're thinking about, a change of scenery or a little moonshot adventure of their own? Having done this, what advice would you give them?
Well, if you ever see the book Vagabonding by Rolf Potts in like the dollar bin or whatever at the thrift store, pick it up, because that book, recommended to me by Tim Ferriss, was a seed of this idea. But I read that book probably 10 years ago. I think if you think that you're stuck in your work situation, world events and this pandemic, I think, has kind of thrown that out the window. So just imagine and create a future of working for yourself that you want, stretch the limits of work from home and working remotely policies. I think now is the time for us to try and figure out what those new work modes are, because I think we're only going to be returning more and more into the office as things across the globe subside. But, my wife's an architect and she was able to do her job for 3 months, from a campsite, from a car, and from a coffee shop. So it can be done.
Wow. Well, that's certainly a call to action. And I tell you what else is going to be a call to action is the 6 clips we're going to share with you today, Chad. We have dug in to the archives. We have selected our very, very favorite innovators, and we have really challenged ourselves to find the essential moonshot thinking. And Mark, I think, tee it up for us a little bit. I mean, what is to come on this very special 100th Moonshots podcast?
Well, we wanted to try and encapsulate, exactly what we believe moonshot thinking is all about. We've had the pleasure of having you with us, listeners, helping us learn out loud, giving us suggestions on authors, innovators, entrepreneurs that we can dig into and learn from. We've got ourselves and our favorite authors in the back of our minds as well, and those around us in the spotlights that always inspire us. And what we wanted to do today was really dig into, okay, well, if we could call out exactly what Moonshots thinking is all about and think about it in almost a playbook, in almost a moment of inspiration you can put on your headphones and learn loads of stuff and be inspired to go and be a Moonshots thinker. That today is what we're trying to do with show 100. So today it's all about bringing some of these incredible innovators that have appeared on the show and those around us, and think about the centenary episode as, okay, well, what lessons do we learn from these innovators? How can we be inspired by them? And what can we go into practice straight away? So today it's all about thinking the Moonshots idea, insights, thinking, and how we can go and do it ourselves.
So we've got everything from David Goggins to Michael Jordan. We've got musicians. We've got people who build rockets for a job, and those that will even go into the depths of our soul. But I think to start the show, to start a Moonshot Centenary show, I think there is really only one place to start, and that is with someone that has challenged us with purpose. And if you remember, Chad, when we did our first show on this person, it really changed the trajectory of the show, didn't it?
Yeah, it more than 10x'd, I think, our expectations of what the show could be. And since then, I think it's like at 25 or 30x. It could only be Simon Sinek in the authors series we did with him.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember? We just couldn't believe how many people were listening to that episode, how much feedback we got, how many people wanted your help to find their why. And we could not start a centenary show anywhere else other than with Simon Sinek. So strap on in, everybody. Get your coffee, get your tea, get your kombucha, whatever it is, because we're going on a ride. So let's have a listen to the king of purpose, the man who challenges us to ask the question of why. It's none other than Mr. Simon Sinek.
Why did you get out of bed this morning? What's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your company exist? In the face of bombardment of manipulation and manipulation, that's the marketplace. How do you get your message to stand out? How do you get your message heard? Why should anyone listen to you? As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was write it down. I call it the golden circle. In the middle is the word why. The center ring is the word how. And the outside ring is the word what. It's this little idea that distinguishes those with the capacity to inspire versus everyone else. Every single organization on the planet knows what they do. These are the products you sell or the services you offer. Some know how they do it. Whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your USP, it's the things that you think make you special or different or better than your competition. But very, very few people in very, very few organizations can clearly state why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make money. That's a result. Why did you get out of bed this morning? And why should anyone care?
It's so fun to hear Simon again. In the halls of my WeWork, just last week, I heard someone quoting Simon Sinek and saying, "Oh, I just read this great book. Start with why."
No way.
Yeah. So it's so funny to have him come up here as our first clip here on today's show.
It was pretty profound when he wrote that book and asked that simple yet powerful question. It really provoked so many people to go, damn, he's right. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? I saw people doing all sorts of, golden circles, the what, the how, the whys, all over the place in many different professions. I mean, it was like a contagion, this why thing that Sinek started, wasn't it, Chad?
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the model. Everyone can draw 3 circles. Everyone understands the questions why, how, and what. And I think what Simon really brought to the fore is he went out and found the examples of Martin Luther King and Apple as companies and individuals that started with why. And then I can't remember what the counterexamples were, but he had really great examples and counterexamples of that framework that really just made it hit home. You can explain the core of the book in just 90 seconds of that clip, but I think it was really the examples that helped make it real. And as you said, bring it into all these different industries and professions.
Yeah. And I think everyone, it came at a time when everyone was so obsessed with, look at what I do, look at what I do. And he just said, why? And I found this really interesting thing as I sort of tried to get into it more from a personal point of view, because what's so powerful about the framework is you can apply it to a brand or you can apply it to yourself. And here's the thing that I'm still working on, I'm going to admit, but what I have found invaluable about Sinek's work is that he related this idea of feeling satisfied and fulfilled with the day's work will always be at its highest when you know the things you are doing ladder up and relate to and are part of your mission, are a part of your purpose. So usually things like purpose about where you want to be as a person, very long-term, very abstract, and sometimes a bit amorphous. But the connection is if you can think through the things that you did today and you can make a direct connection to your purpose, then no matter how hard the thing was, because you know it is part of your purpose, of your reason for being, then it gives you this extra boost when sometimes you feel doubt or you're questioning things. If you know what you did today is helping you achieve and realize your purpose, I found that a great way, particularly when you're working hard or you're struggling or things aren't going as you hoped. If you just ask this question, did the things I do today contribute to me achieving my purpose, my why? This for me was, this was really, really the aha moment with Sinek. So I want to try this challenge to you, Mark. How have you found being introduced to Sinek and trying to do a little bit of starting with why? How's it been for you?
I actually want to, build on some of the stuff that you were just saying there, Mike. I think there is a huge amount of practicality and business tips within Start With Why. The Golden Circle is a great example. And we've used it with clients. We use it with business. And actually, we use it with our projects mostly day to day. But I like exactly where you've just gone. It's quite a mindful approach, not only from a business perspective, but from a personal priority perspective, starting with your priorities of the day, why you're getting out of bed, what you want to try and achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. These are very, very personal, introspective concepts. And what I think is so powerful about Sinek's work, particularly with Start With Why, is how it works both on a business and economic scale, as well as a personal development scale. It's very, very valid for me when I'm trying to think, what am I doing? Am I, in lockdown and pandemics, trying to find that motivation to, get up and go and still continue to do my best work. Starting with why and really understanding what gets me going and what inspires me is so, so valid, particularly right now in this economy and this climate. I feel like Sinek's work just keeps on, like a good wine. It's kind of getting better with age.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mark. I think for those of us caught in this routine, I was lucky. I was able to escape. But I think if you're approaching, the same tasks and projects over and over again, and you find yourself a bit stuck, coming back to the golden circle and asking why, I think is a good jolt out of that.
I think the timelessness of Sinek and asking this really profound question it's really kind of started a movement. And for our listeners, I would just say, even if you're familiar with Sinek's work, I think returning to it and is sort of a really nice refresh on, okay, not just applying these circles and questions of why to the company or the brand that you work for, but to yourself as well, I think is just such a healthy practice. But Chad, I think part of the healthy practices that have been so surprising in the learnings that we've made through really studying these innovators is that actually it's the courage and self-questioning, self-evaluation is a huge part of how they are so great. So, we're often trained to think that greatness is about brute strength and this high octane thing. But what's really interesting is it's not only reflection, but sometimes greatness lies in vulnerability, right?
Yeah. And so we had 5 wonderful episodes on Simon, starting, I believe, episode 52. And that kicked off this wonderful authors series. And I had to bring on the work of Brene Brown to the show. So this clip, I get to introduce the first of 2 ladies we have on the show today. I wanted to be sure to share Brene Brown with our listeners in that episode because of this different perspective that you're talking about, Mike, where especially when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation, there's an alpha, masculine kind of dominant, aggressive archetype. And she has amazing research that she's brought to bear in, I think, at least 7 or 8 books now. That brings a totally different perspective on that. And so I'm really excited to introduce a clip from Brene around how it's not just the people that step into the arena that we should celebrate, but it's also those that can deal with the critics. And the critics might not be coming from where you expect them. So here's Brene Brown on the critics.
I used to think the best way to put your work out into the world is to make sure the critics are not in the arena. But you have no control over who's in the arena. And the best way I have found is to know that they're there and to know exactly what they're going to say to you, because each of you know. The 3 seats that will always be taken when you walk into the arena, when you share your work with someone, the 3 seats that will always be taken are shame, scarcity, and comparison. Shame, completely universal human emotion. We all have it. It's that gremlin that whispers, you're not enough. Or if you're feeling pretty confident, I went through this when Scott was talking, I went back and forth from like a ping pong table with gremlins, back from, oh my God, I'm not enough, to, I can do this, I can totally do, oh, who do you think you are? That's the other gremlin, that's how it works. Like, look at you, big for your britches. I clearly have Texas gremlins. I don't know that everyone says too big for their britches, but that's what my gremlins say. So shame always has a seat. The other seat that's always taken is scarcity. What am I doing what am I doing that's original? Everyone else is doing this. 150 people are doing it who are better trained than I am. What am I contributing? Does this really matter? The third seat, always comparison. How many of you ever struggle with comparison? Oh my God, comparison is a nightmare. You know, I made a pact not to talk to anyone in the green room because what I was afraid that I would end up doing is say, so what are you talking about? That's interesting because I'm going first. And so if it sounds super good and I think I suck comparatively, I may say that. And then I'm catching a flight to Dallas. Comparison is always there. The fourth seat I left open for you. You gotta know who's in the fourth seat. Is it a teacher? Is it a parent? Is it a shitty ex-coworker? Am I the only one that's ever had one of those? The thing is, I don't care what people think. I don't worry about the critics in the arena. Sends a huge red flag up for me. We're hardwired for connection. When we stop caring what people think, we lose our capacity for connection. When we become defined by what people think, we lose our capacity to be vulnerable. Not caring what people think is its own kind of hustle. Trust me.
Oh, what I just loved the Brene Brown series, and I loved the Gifts of Imperfection book. I just feel so, I'm just reminded that our moonshot thinkers, innovators, authors, they're real people, real human beings. And it feels very, very, I don't know, almost reassuring when you hear Brené talk about vulnerability and these 3 or maybe 4 seats that are always in the auditorium or the arena when you're going up against a challenge or a potential problem. You know, for me, where Brené really, really comes to life and really captures my, I suppose, inspiration is this acknowledgement, this knowledge that sometimes the critics aren't going to be really obvious. You know, the 4th seat that Brené was referencing, you know, whether it's a shitty ex-coworker or whatever, that's quite a literal one. But the other 3, shame, scarcity, and comparison, they're kind of within ourselves. So once we acknowledge the imperfections that we have, we're able to kind of own it and go and make that difference. You know, again, it's something that we've talked about a lot on the Moonshots podcast. Mindset and how you approach things is within your control. And I love where Brené's taking us with that clip, because she's saying it's okay if it's hard to do. It's okay if it's a little bit of a challenge and you feel vulnerable, because that's the kind of essence. That's the whole point. That's something that makes you you. And once you accept you for being yourself, you can be productive, you can be happy, and you can be kind of your best version. I mean, Mike, what did you take from the Gifts of Imperfection book as well as the Brene Brown series?
Well, you know, this idea of the ultimate courage is being vulnerable. I mean, there's so much. I mean, in all of them, these big themes of courage and vulnerability and shame, these are things that we just, I mean, when I started my career, nobody was talking about this at all. And even if you go back, like just to kind of capture an era, imagine the swashbuckling era of Jack Welch at GE. Do you think he was talking about courage, shame, and vulnerability? I mean, come on. It's so exciting to discover that these things, which live as little voices in your head, thoughts that you rarely share, she's like, well, I'm just going to put them right out there. And then you're like, oh my God, she is making so much sense right now. I mean, you brought Brené to us, Chad. Was that how you experienced it? That it was like, wow, she's talking about stuff this stuff's in my head, but no one's talking about it.
Re-listening to this clip, it's kind of devastating to me, because the last line she said really hit home. She said, not caring what others think is its own kind of hustle. And to me, that's such a beautiful definition of like invulnerability, that It is the fact that you're taking off your armor and you are beginning to care about what others think that is you actually being vulnerable. And so I took it as like a really deep cut in like, hey, Chad, you need to think about opening up that armor and letting yourself be a little bit more vulnerable. Because I think for a number of reasons, life circumstances and world circumstances, I think have caused us to build up some pretty hard shells in certain areas of our life. And so this was just like a beautiful reintroduction to what it means to be vulnerable.
And isn't it exciting that someone like Brene Brown has I would say, her own courage to talk about, write about, these sort of fundamental human behaviors and thoughts, and to put them on the table. And I am so excited by her success. I think it's such a healthy conversation. I think she brings so much to us in our personal and professional lives. I think she's an absolute, think about it this way. A little bit of Sinek and a little bit of Brene Brown, and you are on the way to a moonshot. There's a lifetime of study to get those things right, Chad.
Yeah, like 10 books, a Netflix special. Yeah.
Look, what's so exciting is we're just two clips into the show, one from Simon Sinek, one from Brene Brown, and you can just see how much is inside these ideas. Before we go to the next one, there's a call to action that we have for all of our listeners, and it is so exciting to know that we have listeners in just the most exciting places on the planet. We've got Japan, Italy, Belgium, Turkey, Singapore, Taiwan, Ukraine, Nigeria, Kenya, Kazakhstan, Uruguay, Moldova, and many, many more places. But we want to hear from you. We want to understand who you would like us to study. So, Mark, if someone's got a great, inspiring innovator that they would love us to decode, where should they go and what should they do?
We have a new feature, dear listeners, on our humble homepage on the big wide web. If you navigate over to moonshots.io and either you scroll right to the bottom, or in fact, if you're up at the top, you can navigate to the right-hand side. We have a feedback feature on moonshots.io. Think of this as your direct telephone number, can on the end of a string, carrier pigeon way to communicate with us, even though we're on possibly the other side of the world to where you are. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you guys think about the show and who we should be covering next. So please leave us your thoughts on the moonshots.io homepage via the feedback button, and we'll make sure to read absolutely every single one and listen up, because you never know when your innovator might be covered.
Exactly. And we have some cool shows coming up. We are going to do a teamwork series, and there's some very cool, well-known and maybe emerging new innovators that we're going to break down. We're going to do another author series, but we need to hear from you, our listeners. Tell us who you want us to study. Head over to moonshots.io and let us know. Put in your submission. We know we've got a number of folks on our long list, including Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank. She's on the list. We'll be covering her. Thank you to Bettina in Germany. So get on to the World Wide Web. Send us your thoughts. We want to hear from you. And I can tell you, someone we know our audience loves hearing from is a little somebody who's perhaps the busiest CEO on the planet, Mark.
Yes, this chap who's going to be our next clip in episode 100 is probably one of not only the busiest CEO, but maybe one of the busiest men on Earth and even beyond Earth. A man who has entered the stratosphere with his thoughts and his ambitions, a man who's reaching to the moon and beyond, a man who's capturing our attention in podcasts, on television, in a variety of different media formats. And it's just a pleasure kind of watching him kind of do his own thing. You can be inspired, you can be captivated, you can be perhaps distracted by all of the amazing things that this particular innovator is doing. So the next clip we're going to hear from is one of our fan favorites, Elon Musk, a man who needs only a little bit of an introduction. But like I say, he's such a figurehead that he inspires all of us. And this next clip is a little bit inspired, I'd say, or perhaps a little bit connected to the Brene Brown clip that we just heard about vulnerability, because this clip is a great reminder that no matter where you are in your career, no matter what position you uphold, whether you're flying into space or whether you're down here on Earth, you are going to potentially face moments where you have critics, where you have challenges, problems, or distractions, perhaps. So this next clip, our third clip in show 100, is Elon Musk telling us how to overcome your critics.
People who've been in the rocketry business for decades, who say about you that you don't know what you don't know.
Well, I suppose that's true of anyone. How can anyone know what they don't know?
But when critics say you can't do this, your answer to them is,
we've done it.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight in the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that, because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. You know, I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here, and I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
Certainly hoping they would.
What are you trying to prove to them?
What I'm trying to do is to make a significant difference in spaceflight and help make spaceflight accessible to almost anyone. And I would hope for as much support in that direction as we can receive.
Ooh, I mean, you can hear in how he was answering those questions. I mean, that was really stinging for him. The fact that his childhood heroes were criticizing him public. I mean, guys, people might have criticism for us. Much of the time we won't even hear it. But imagine being so criticized in public by your heroes. I mean, Chad, I mean, doesn't that just, as he was talking there, you could hear Elon just like, you could hear the pain that was for him, right?
Yeah. What I take away from this is he has a real simple invitation to them to come and see what he's doing. And I think he's so focused on execution and he so wholeheartedly believes in what he's doing. I think he's able to cope with it because he understands, he knows that they don't understand. And I think he's right. If he got his critics, from the traditional government-funded NASA space programs to spend a day or a week or two at SpaceX, like I'd imagine they'd be thrilled at what they're doing. And it's his constant uphill battle against the status quo that I think is his true kind of moonshotter quality, because he's not complacent in any industry. There's 5 industries that he's disrupting. And it's just because he knows that it can be better. And he has all these beautiful mental models and heuristics that he uses to know how to improve them. He's just like, we got to get the cost of the rocket to this. We've got to reuse it. And then if we can do that, then spaceflight becomes 10 times cheaper than it was beforehand. And he's willing to put his money where his mouth is.
Right. Totally. And I love how he was so he wasn't doing a, well, stuff them. I don't care what they think. He still was like, just come see what we're doing. Please come see it. That's all he was asking. And I really like that as a response. I really like that he didn't fall for that trap of people will often disregard, they will talk down the individual if what they're saying is a critique of them, a defensive mechanism. Well, their opinion doesn't matter anyway. But I love how he's still holding out this little peace offering. Just come see what we're doing, guys. Just come see. And I thought that was really nice. And I think a big lesson for us, don't you think, Chad? Just like, don't go there, take the higher ground.
Yeah, it's a great PR lesson on top of it all. But I think you really get this sense of he's just wired differently, I think, than people are naturally. Like, people want to stay in the status quo, and that is never going to be good enough for him. And so I think all he can do is try to enroll other people into that belief that things can be better.
I think that's really true. And Mark, when you heard that, once we get through on the other side of, oof, that was tough. I did think it was a really poignant, just for somebody who gets a little bit ropey on Twitter, it was an enormously mature response, wasn't it?
It's very, very humble. Elon often gets in the headlines, whether he appears on Joe Rogan or whether he's across Twitter, because he is quite bombastic, with his flamethrower, calling the companies strange, bizarre names like the Boring Company, which is, again, perhaps a fantastic PR lesson. I think here he's showing that kind of maturity. Maybe that's a patronizing word. This humbleness of, it's okay, I want to offer this invitation. I would just want people to sort of see what I'm doing. I'm trying to do all this cool stuff for mankind and get us into different spaces, build up, like you say, Chad, I think 5, 6 different sectors, different industries that he's across. And he is just this guy who's, super resilient. He has all these challenges, even from his heroes, these astronauts that push him back, perhaps. He's still just doing his very, very best at, furthering research and development and products. But I think at the same time, he kind of makes it look quite fun. Whenever I see Elon and wherever I hear clips and whenever we cover him on the Moonshots show, I'm sort of captivated by his upbeatness. I think there's an element of humbleness, absolutely, don't get me wrong, but I think his positivity and the fact that he's able to sort of say, it's okay, they can come and check it out, I wish they would, it's not going to stop me though. There's not an aggression. There's not him saying, well, screw you guys, I'm going to do it anyway. If anything, it's more his natural energy sort of takes him in that direction. And that's inspiring. That kind of gets me going. And I kind of think, ooh, I'm kind of wanting to feel that energy too. I get that.
Yeah, I might challenge you on that humility, Mark. I don't know how humble Elon is, but he was certainly humbled in this clip. He was definitely brought down a couple of rungs here.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah. He certainly has shown the capacity to take the hits and to keep on going. And that's without doubt so very, very moonshotty. So I just want to remind you guys, we've heard from, an academic, we've heard from an author, we've heard from an entrepreneur, and we're only halfway through this centenary show where we're trying to get all of the goodness of the Moonshots podcast, the essentials of going for a moonshot into one show. And the party ain't over, and we're going to bring some rock and roll to the show. Chad, where shall we go next?
It's my pleasure to bring back a real deep cut here, going back to episode 9, where we learned from Lady Gaga. It was our first show where we brought on a guest, and I think really helped us expand our horizons when we were looking for different moonshot thinkers. And so Lady Gaga, I think, kind of builds on what we learned from both Brene and Elon, in that we can really learn from her how to, from within ourselves, be relentless and fearless when it comes to, our artistic or maybe our professional approach and capabilities. So here's Lady Gaga on being relentless and fearless.
I just have such a love and affinity for show business. I just always felt famous. That's what my first album was really about, is that fame comes from within, inside of you, and it's not something that you obtain. Mm-hmm. And I still feel that way in a lot of ways. I like to know that I can define my fame and define my beauty for myself, which is why I'm so vigilant and relentless about my image and my music. Is I will not allow, no matter how successful I become, for the public to define or indicate what it is that I create, or what it is that I believe is beautiful, or what I believe is a hit pop record. That's who I am, and I will always be that way. Relentless and fearless and vicious.
Oh, moonshotter right there in the music industry. What I love, or what kind of gets me going there from Lady Gaga, is her continual reference to you, your mindset, your approach, ownership. I'm thinking about what I'm doing, my music, my image. If there's one clip within, I think it's 50 seconds long, if there's one clip that is all about owning your image, your music, your approach to things, your mindset, your behavior, it's that clip from Lady Gaga. She just really, really goes deep into this idea of you're in control of your world, your sphere of artistic integrity, and your capability to put out a product or a design or an experience or music in this case. Much like Elon is in control of his products, and some of our other innovators are in control of theirs, Lady Gaga is really calling out here, don't forget that you're in control, not anybody else. And that for me is quite empowering. I mean, Mike, what do you get from Lady Gaga here?
Well, can you imagine how many people are pulling her in different directions, and how incredibly essential it is to know who you want to be and that you will make that choice. I mean, we see so many celebrities get off track just because it's the classic thing when they have the wrong manager, when they have the wrong people around them, they get taken off track. I think, though, that there's this lesson of, in Gaga, we see somebody who is unquestionably knows who she wants to be. It's almost like she read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, because she is like roaring. She's fearless. She's like, I know exactly what I'm about. And I don't know about you, Chad, but I can just hear in her voice, she has this real clarity of purpose.
Yeah, I think one thing, Ed, the interconnectedness between all these clips is, it's like lighting my brain on fire here. Because I hear maybe a lot of myself in the Lady Gaga clip, and maybe not enough Brene Brown. And so I'm kind of like, there's an interesting yin and yang there, because in some ways I think of celebrity like Lady Gaga that has tens of millions or hundreds of millions of fans really has to protect herself and not be vulnerable. And so there may be like you could take it too far. So that there's this interesting dynamic about, how do we come up with this why, be really relentless and fearless about it, and yet still maintain that space for vulnerability. Yeah, I'm episode 100. I'm loving this. It's just like lighting my moonshot brain on fire here.
It's really interesting because there's this emerging operating system that the strength is very thoughtful. It comes deep from within inside, and it's not a strength of ego. Like everything we're hearing is there's a certain, as Brene would say, there's a certain vulnerability, there's a certain purpose, there's a certain following your path regardless of what others say. There seems to be this inner life force that they are all calling upon, whether they're sending rockets to space or creating famous pop songs. It's all coming down to this life force that somehow lays inside of each of these individuals. And Chad, what I want to pitch to you is the idea that from a cerebral perspective, it's so good to hear these mindsets, these mental models. But there's also, I think, something else that we should celebrate in listening and understanding and learning out loud with these people is it's just inspiring, because you don't have to think too much about what Gaga is saying. You could also do this interesting of just feel what she's saying. She is saying to you, be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do not compromise. Be the best version of yourself. Like, be relentless, be fearless. And I think isn't that just one of the delights of studying these people, is you have this cerebral mindset, but then you're like, damn, they know what they're on about. They're going in the right direction. Like, to me, that is just as equally delightful, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, across everyone that we've, profiled on the show, both myself with you and Mark, I'm just going through like the Rolodex of, the 99 episodes, and the joy of discovering, listening to and discovering these wisdom from all these individuals has been really fantastic. But on this topic of like passion and kind of uniqueness, and you've got this great clip coming up, Mike. So we've got to get to it.
So here's where it really comes in. If you want to take Gaga and turbocharge it, we should look no further than Michael Jordan and the basketball court, because everybody looks at the guy and he looks the athlete. So you think, oh, he's just like this natural born athlete. He's just magical. He's from another planet. He flies like a superhero. But what is so beautiful, what is so Moonshots, is that there is just one word that made him Superman. There is one word that taught him how to play with his teammates. And this word is practice.
This whole thing about you practicing. I mean, if you talk to any of your teammates, they would say, even if they saw something in the game, it's like, shoot, you should have saw him Thursday. To practice with you was like they had a game instead of a practice.
And when I got to the pros with Kevin Lockery, when I was drafted number 3, Kevin Lockery used to put me on the starting 5. We used to be killing the second 5. But he wanted to test me out. So let's say we're going to 8, and it can be 5-1 or 5-2 against the second team. And if you lose, you got to run. He would switch me in the middle of the game to the second team. And I'm saying, well, okay, he's trying to prove a point. Boom, we'll bounce back and win the game. Those are all training tools for me. And every day in practice was like that to me. It was a competition. So when the game comes, there's nothing that I haven't already practiced. It's a routine. Whatever happens in the game now, okay, I've done this before.
Short for the win. Got it! At the buzzer, he's done it again!
Was fear of failure a motivator?
I never feared about my skills, because I put in the work.
Put him away, MJ.
Work ethic eliminates fear.
Yes.
You know, so if you put forth the work, then what are you fearing? You know what you're capable of doing, what you're not. I practice as if I'm playing a game. So when the moment comes in the game, it's not new to me. That's the beauty of the game of basketball. That's the reason why you practice. That's the effort. So when you get to that moment, you don't have to think. Instinctively, things happen.
Wow, Chad, right? Like, there's so much in that, isn't there?
Yeah. I love how all these clips are building on one another, because in a way, this is almost too simple, where he's saying it's just practice. But there's so much, I think, that goes into practice. He had coaches that really understood how to motivate him, and they designed entire training programs around him and built teams around him to support him. So I think, what this is really bringing home for me is it's not just practice, as in kind of the sitting in the chair and doing it, but it's also the preparation and the routines and processes that you set up that allow you to just get into that mode of practice, so that you don't have to be fearful when it comes to performance time, whatever that is, whether it's doing the project or getting up and speaking in front of people or whatever it is.
That's so interesting that you mentioned speaking, because to me, this is the true power of this clip, and in the thinking of Michael Jordan, is that practice eliminates fear.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about public speaking, the best thing you can do is rehearse and rehearse, have a few trial runs, sit your partner down and give them the speech. I often talk about that if you take public speaking as a metaphor for, practice eliminates fear, you can do a shift. And I think the shift in practice eliminating fear is you transition from fear to excitement. And from being, oh my gosh, it could really go wrong, to I can't wait for it because it's going to go so right. And when you speak or when you do anything in life and you've practiced enough, I truly believe that you achieve this moment of flow where you look at Michael Jackson. When he would perform, it was like the music was just inside him. He just felt it. Look at great athletes. They make it look so easy and effortless because practice eliminated fear. They're just in the moment. And when you're giving a talk and you've practiced it enough, you don't need to be in your mind tripping over yourself thinking, what am I going to say next? You know the subject, you know the story, and you can tell it in the moment. And I think that's the power of what we can take from MJ.
How about you, Mark, when it comes to practice?
For me, I mean, it's funny. You've just referenced something, Mike, around recognizing or reappropriating the level of anxiety into a kind of feeling of excitement. Because I think they do share similar traits, and your body responds in a similar way. So that feeling of butterflies in your stomach is a sign of excitement as well as fear, as well as anxiety. Where I think this clip from Jordan captures me, Chad, is because by putting in that hard work, you can then turn the anxiety into excitement. It's kind of like an equation. Put in the hard work equals no fear. That equals total excitement for the game. I'm ready to get out on the court because I've put in the hard work and because I'm prepared for it. What I think, though, just to build on what I think MJ's calling out here, and I think it again comes back to something that I think, Mike, you'd said with regards to the Lady Gaga clip, this personal drive. Michael Jordan's getting out on the court. At the end of the day, it's up to him to go and do that. He could sit in the locker room. He might have managers or coaches yelling at him to go and get out there and work hard. But at the end of the day, putting in the practice is up to you. It's up to me. It's up to Michael Jordan to go and do it himself and to put in to the best of his ability. And what I think is kind of captivating about that clip is this hard work and idea of preparation is totally ownable to himself. Once he's put in that hard work and he's prepared, he doesn't feel that anxiety because he knows himself he's ready for the game and he's ready to get out on the court and play the best version of his own plays that he can do. So for me, preparation, the idea of practice, it kind of all starts with that internal drive. You're supported by your team out on the court. And once you've put in this equation of preparation equals no fear, you're off to the races.
Yeah. How do you internalize it, Chad, when you think about preparation? Is there a practice that you have where you really prepare for something and you just notice the fruits of that labor, where you're like, man, that prep really helped?
Yeah, I think some of it is a kind of visualization practice. So it's a combination of that and then in getting the reps in. So if I can stand and deliver the presentation, I will do so. But let's say it's maybe 5 or 10 minutes beforehand, and obviously I'm like about to get on stage or whatnot. I think even just visualizing that, and I know this is big in the sports world. Just imagine creating in your mind's eye you performing in in an easeful and kind of ideal way. I think is really helpful and productive. And there's also like a bit of mindfulness in that too, where it's just like there's an interest. The way I hear MJ describe his practice, it's almost like it's his meditation, like before he gets onto the court, so that he's already done the infinite, variety of plays and maneuvers, so that nothing is new to him on the court, and therefore he's not afraid of anything because he's already seen it.
Yeah, and his teammates even talked about him playing harder at practice than a game, because he took it to like level 100 in practice. And by being in control of that and taking it so extreme that rarely games ever got to that. So he was so like the game felt like he was playing in fourth gear. He never had to go to fifth.
Well, he was playing with one teammate or two teammates against 5 opponents. Like he's stacking the deck like way against him, so that of course it's going to be easy when it's 5v5.
But it's also, that we talked about visualization. It's so funny how great athletes will really have a visualization process of them feeling rhythm, flow, performing at a certain level. And there's nothing wrong with doing that in your professional career as well, whether it's a speech, whether it's a big meeting, whatever it is, like visualize who you can be. And to me, I relate this so much to something that I picked up over 2020, which is jogging, and never been a jogger. And so what I discovered is that if I really wanted to make good progress in a run for tomorrow, I started this idea of visualizing that run before. And I notice a huge difference that when I have really thought about the time and the way I want to run the following day, when I've done that, I often achieve that goal that I've set. And what I notice, if I haven't done that active visualization the night before, I run fine, but not great. And it's really interesting how I even see mindset affecting not only my work, but even how I think about running and keeping fit. It's such a powerful process, isn't it?
I'd love to add to this. You guys are totally right. Visualizing that end goal, visualizing where you might struggle or visualizing where you might succeed is totally, you're right. It's that form of practice. It's that form of taking yourself and almost mentally preparing for it. And, once you've got that mental image in mind, I think F1 drivers do it as well. You know, they'll visualize those turns and actually visualize even one step ahead, getting on the podium. And that's what kind of drives them through that race. And I think you're totally right. Visualization, so valid.
And when we talk about visualization, it works in the boardroom, it works on the sports field, and it can actually help you achieve things that maybe you didn't know were possible. And I think, Mark, you've got one last goodie for us. One of the most popular shows, perhaps even challenging Mr. Sinek himself, but coming from a very different place. Mark, how do we want to round out this series of Moonshotters? Have you got something that's going to challenge us?
We've got an absolute powerhouse of a final clip. This is somebody who really pulls a lot of these different strands of personal drive, of discipline, of transformation, mental toughness, putting in the hard work, and, you know, ultimately having quite an astonishing life and career, all laddering up to where they are now. And this final clip that we're going to listen to is Mr. David Goggins, who was, you know, like you say, Mike, a fantastic episode and really inspirational to get into. And I think it just feels the perfect rounding out of hearing Simon Sinek, Brene Brown, Elon Musk, Lady Gaga, and just then with Michael Jordan. Hearing Goggins tell us a little bit about his story and ultimately how you yourself can get over things because it's in your power, your capability, is, I think, a real demonstration of Moonshots thinking. It's, again, this idea of ownership and inspiration. So this final clip, episode 100, the centenary show, we are going to hear from Mr. David Goggins tell us about never giving up.
People hear my story and think this guy is sadistic. I realized how the brain works. I figured out how the brain works. I'm a scared kid, and that's what gives me so much power. I had no foundation, and I built this off of just researching the mind. The feeling you get is basically invincibility. You realize that you can't do it all the time. When you need to do it, I know I can go to a place that I can live in. And when you know that you can run on broken legs and you can do certain things that a lot of people can do, but they're not willing to do, this power, this sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight, and you're fighting, it gives you this charge of energy of when you're sitting there at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and you're duct taping your feet up because they're broken, and you're doing it by yourself, and you're going through arguably one of the hardest training in the world. And these guys, most of them are healthy, and you're going through it broken, and you're already at a disadvantage, but you're still there. You can feed into that and tap into that for a lot of power. But if you look at it, well, I'm broken, man. I'm not gonna make it. But if you look at it as, man, I'm broken and I'm still here, and I'm fighting, and I'm gonna find a way to get through this because I have no other place to go. It gives you a lot of power. When things start to suck really bad, my brain and a lot of people's brain, they don't go to your dad beating you up. Your brain says, we gotta get the out of here. This is miserable. So anger goes away a lot of times when you're suffering because your brain just says, we gotta run, we gotta go. So that anger is not popping up saying, oh, I'm gonna show them, I'm gonna show those people. No, there has to be a much deeper, when I say deeper, it has to be down to mineral soil. It has to be down to that nice mineral soil where nothing can burn. You can't burn dirt. So it has to be down that low, that literally is something in you that's at the core of your soul. But you don't find it unless you spend a lot of time with what you want to be in life. I can't give that to you.
Right.
You can't give it to somebody. when you find your true passion in life, and my passion for me wasn't like, oh, I want to be, I don't give a Navy SEALs, Army, I don't give a shit. I want to serve my country. I want to be someone that I'm proud of.
I mean, there's a lot of energy and tenacity in that. And, you know, someone who's achieved the remarkable military training that he has, you have to expect that this will come with some of that gritty energy. But here is the most remarkable thing that I want to share with you, Chad, is that in the end, he brought that whole thinking of the way you don't give up. He brought it right back to Simon Sinek. It is knowing your purpose.
You stole my thunder, Mike.
So isn't this exciting that a guy who is the only man in the world to have qualified for all three special forces in the United States, he can be full of that power and that energy, but it comes with the same essential thoughtfulness of that of both Brene and Simon Sinek. I mean, does that not connect all the dots? Does that not just make your mind go racing with possibilities, Chad?
Yeah, it's the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail here. We're coming back to the beginning. He has an amazing story, and his energy in this clip is it comes from the place in which he's describing. You can tell that he's speaking to you from that place deep at his core. It's so interesting for me to see how he went through these. He took on these trials to help reveal to him, I think, what is at his core. And so that's kind of like an inside out approach. Whereas, Simon, I think, comes from a more cerebral or heady, top down approach and kind of figuring out what your why is. But when you combine these two, I think there's some real magic here in that maybe if you're struggling with finding your why, go to one of those extremes and see, do a marathon if you've only been running 5Ks and see what that reveals about your character. Or, if those kind of physical trials are maybe normal or par for the course for you, you could try and be more introspective and thoughtful about what your purpose is. But I love how we've just come back to the beginning here at the end of the show.
And apologies for stealing the
it just goes to show, like, you record 60 plus episodes with someone and like your brains just begin to function similarly. Mark, I'm warning you that's what's going to happen if it hasn't already.
Just to build on what Chad was reflecting there with David Goggins, I think that's a real, dare I say, practical tip or even challenge that you're calling out there, Chad, which I really, really liked. In order to sort of see, kind of what you're made of, to see how your body and your mind react to certain situations, go and seek out those challenges, go and seek out those marathons or those moments of discomfort. I think one of the traits that we've seen in a lot of these clips today are moments of, as Brené would call it, vulnerability, as Elon would call it, critics, as Lady Gaga would call it, challenges around not giving up artistic integrity. They all stem from this particular challenge. And I think, as an observation, all of these individuals have evolved or become hardened through that exposure. Obviously, particularly Mr. David Goggins, by going through the different rounds of training for all of his military experience, his body and mindset became battle hardened to that. And I think as a call to action from each of these innovators, each of these moonshotters, putting in that practice and going that extra mile to challenge yourself, your mindset, is a path to becoming that, inverted commas, best version of yourself. I love this kind of lesson that I think we're scratching.
And the thing that we see in Goggins and others is that when you do push yourself, if you understand that we will have a survival mechanism that kicks in when we're going to an uncomfortable place, and that's usually flight or fight. If you can control that response, what you will discover on the other side of this is that you can do so much more than you realize, because usually what happens is we just chicken out. We don't realize how powerful we really can be. And I was watching I think he's now 4 or 5 time champion of men's CrossFit. And I was watching an interview with him, and he was like, my basic observation of people is they have no idea how powerful they really are. And he was sort of talking about it in an athletic point of view. But I think what Goggins speaks to is just know that you're going to get a bit shaky when things get tough, but you've got to stay the course. When you're on the 6th mile or 7th mile and it's really starting to hurt, stay the course. Because it's almost very helpful, isn't it, that you know that you might want to stop running, and you might entertain that thought. Like I certainly, when I'm going longer and faster, I am prepared for my mind to be doing these tricks of like, maybe I don't have to run a personal best today, right? But it's almost, you can preempt that with any challenge you have in life and know the doubts will come, but you must not give up. I find that very powerful, don't you, Matt?
Oh, I exactly right. It's so powerful. It's a real, call to action. It's a real moment of, right, time to wake up, time to put on, the right set of glasses to see the challenges as opportunities, to go and seek out. Maybe it's a race, maybe it's a marathon, maybe it's just setting the intention before you go to bed to go for a run in the morning. And you kind of put all your gears into action, put all your gears together and have that activity, that action. I think that's the way to strive into, I think finding a kind of happier or more efficient or more effective version of yourself. I think by giving yourself that meaning and giving yourself the attention that you deserve, the introspection, I think that's equally a big lesson that we can learn from all of our moonshot innovators. They know what drives, going back to Sinek again, they know what drives them. And once you've done that little bit of hard work and you think about what motivates you to go for that run or go and do your best work in your career, whatever that is, once you've found that, you're going to be more content.
What David's brought back up here for me is this discomfort. And all the people we've heard from are telling us we need to be comfortable in the discomfort.
Yeah.
And Brene's saying that there's going to be shame and there's going to be comparison and there's going to be scarcity. And Elon, I called it, he's not satisfied with the status quo, but you could also call that, comfort. I think he's disrupting everything because he's really comfortable being in that uncomfortableness. He's just like, he just plows right through it. And I think, David, I think, reminds us a lot of what, and even Lady Gaga too, it's just that rebelliousness, not just for rebelliousness' sake, but they're seeking out that discomfort in a way that's going to grow themselves. And then through, their music or through their businesses or through their, work will inspire and transform others. I think it's a really, really cool connecting thread between everyone.
Yeah. So that was 6 ideas from 6, truly inspiring people, Chad, having traveled technically almost half of the country the last 3 months and coming back with all this fresh, clear-headedness. What really stands out to you in the lessons that we can learn, this essential mindset and behaviors for moonshot thinking and moonshot doing? What's really standing out for you? What would be the note to self as you go into a new day tomorrow? what were you go, that was a good thought. I'm going to focus on that. Was there something that really stood out?
Well, first, I'm bookmarking this show and returning to it because I think it's a great distillation of the moonshot thinking mindset. But the thing that really spoke to me, and I mentioned this after the clip, is the last line from Brene, where she says that not caring what others think is its own kind of hustle. And I'm just really curious how inviting some more vulnerability in all areas of my life could be, could be transformational for me. Like I'm pretty comfortable, and David's telling me to not be so comfortable. And so that's what I want to try and do.
Embrace the discomfort. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was also a big theme of the Joe Rogan show. He really talks about you want to earn things. And in order to do that, you need to embrace the discomfort and just be comfortable. Like Goggins talked about, just know your mind's going to be doing tricks and saying, stop, don't run so hard. But you need to just keep going, don't give up. And just embrace that, in being your best self will come challenge, and just be ready for that.
Yeah. Well, now it's time to put you on the spot, Mark. What's your takeaway here from our 100th episode?
For me, I think I can't escape your Brené observation. I think that kind of about the hustle is so true. Your own kind of hustle, I love. But actually, I'm also captivated by Lady Gaga. I'm also captivated by the ownership that she took with her artistic integrity, the way she looked, the way that she behaves, remembering that it's up to you. And I feel like it's quite it's a moment that kind of wakes you up and says, okay, well, if I put down the phone, put down the emails, I am me. This knowledge of yourself as an entity that you are in control of. For me, that is a big takeaway from our 100 episodes. You're in control, and it's up to you to go and take ownership of it. Mike, ownership as well. We've just covered extreme ownership in our show 99. Looking back over the last 99 episodes, though, what for you was the biggest takeaway? What's the most surprising element, or the thing that you're going to take into the next 100 shows?
Well, I mean, I listen to these and I realize how much more work I've got to do on myself. I mean, that's for sure. I'm like, oh gosh, back to the drawing board, Mikey P. But also how perhaps the difference between now and my younger self is that I know it won't come easy, and I know it's not going to be a walk in the park, and that's okay. And I think that's what I've taken from these. And just, I'm also just reflecting on how much power there really is in what each of these 6 individuals shared in these clips, and their ideas, and how we can make use of them, and how extremely positive I am about the future. And I feel like if there was ever a time to get back in touch with your purpose and your vulnerability and overcoming criticism and just being relentless and practicing and not giving up, then it feels like 2020, the back end of 2020 is the time to do that. Right, Chad?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why these clips really just hit me so hard, having been on this wonderful road trip experience for 3 months, and then, realizing that we're all going to be hunkering down here, at least in the Northern Hemisphere for the winter. It's a wonderful time to, we've got 60 days until, the end of the year. So, just enough time to make a few changes, but not so much time where we're going to procrastinate it and not do it.
And I think that if we had one moment with all of these individuals, they would say, don't be a victim of the circumstance and the things that you don't control. Focus on what you can control. really go back to yourself and your purpose. And I think we would find them all saying very similar things. They wouldn't say it'd be easy, but I think the theme here that connects them together to make the Moonshots playbook, if you will, is so damn good. It's just exciting. It's inspiring. And look, not to be understated, they're all very challenging as well. So what a wonderful way to celebrate our 100th show. So Chad, so much thanks and gratitude for you tuning in, and as you're fresh back from your adventures. How have you enjoyed being back on the show?
I'm going to have to shoehorn my way back on here before too long. My sabbatical was too long. So again, thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure. And huge shout out to all of you loyal listeners out there. Thank you for continuing to stay on the Moonshots train. And I'm going to be bookmarking this episode and returning to it. I hope everyone else does as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, it was great to have Chad back. It was like the band was back together again.
Yeah, I can't put it into words what a pleasure it was doing the episode with you, Chad. I felt like, we were out on the court playing some basketball, then getting ready to get into the arena, played to 10,000 fans, and all while packing our bags and getting on a mission to Mars. So it's been a lot of fun, and we'll definitely be doing it again.
Yeah, you didn't come with your meat dress though.
No, I didn't. That's next time.
But he has been known to go for some heels in the office, just so you know, Chad. All right. Well, listen, Chad, Owen, thank you. Mark, Pearson, Freeland, thank you to you too. And most of all, thank you to you, all of our listeners. We are so delighted to be here together, sharing with you what is the Essential Moonshots Show. We've taken 6 ideas from 6 really amazing people, and we are just thrilled at the idea of sharing it with you. So thank you to those of you who are tuning in from South Korea, from Spain, from Russia, India, Belgium, Poland, Uruguay, and even Panama too. We really, truly thank you for your time to share with us, to learn out loud. And today was a special one. We have really gone on a journey that started with purpose and asking that big old question of why, thanks to Simon Sinek. And part of that journey is going to be vulnerability. And as we face our critics, we have to remember that we must be relentless and fearless on whatever our quest, whether it's at home or in the office, whether it's personal, professional, or on the sports field. It is so critical to put in the practice. And if you put in that practice, there will become moments, there will become times where you consider walking away. And if we all listen to David Goggins, he says to us, don't give up. So there you have it, the Essential, the 100th Moonshots podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. And that's a wrap of the Moonshots podcast.